thank all the organizers, Madhuri and Indrashji. But it wasn't until I took a pilgrimage. I've done many, many pilgrimages in India. I come to India quite often, and I've gone to many of the places, Kedarnath, Badrinath, Gangotri. I'm always doing some pilgrimage. But I was organizing a conference in Ayodhya on the theme of Dharma about 5-6 years ago, when I decided to go visit Ayodhya. And so a few of us who were in the conference, we took the train to Ayodhya. I wasn't expecting anything special, except, of course, it was the birthplace of Kingdom of Ram. But as soon as I stepped off the train, I was in another time period. And as I walked the streets and visited the places, I only had a day there. And as I was writing, I came home right after that and really secluded myself and was writing what I was seeing and hearing. I consider myself to be a scribe. I write what I see and I hear. But I knew I was in the presence of Seeta because the messages that I was receiving changed me, transformed me. I'm not the same person as I was before I wrote the book. The ecological messages that came to me about, because it was Treta Yuga. So I got to see, peer into the Treta Yuga, what life was like before humanity began so filled with, before the idea, the concept of separation, where there was much more integration into the whole. We saw ourselves as part of the whole, not these separate entities that needed to assert ourselves. That developed over time. But Treta Yuga was before that sense of rights, as Indrashji said, rights, the idea of my and mine, and I have these rights, and I can take from nature what I want because I'm a superior being. Those thoughts did not exist at that time. And what Sita and Ram could see was that Ravan, who was a great being but had fallen into this illusion, very destructive delusion, was seeding negative thoughts into the collective. And it was a downward movement of Treta Yuga descending, which means there was a loss of spiritual knowledge coming in the future. We were descending into a less enlightened age. And so these elevated thoughts of Dharma, had to be seeded into the collective to carry us through until we entered an ascending arc, which we are now in. So we now can leave behind some of those Kali Yuga mindsets that have been so harmful. And so there were a lot of thoughts, messages that came through about the inner work. The outer story is told. My interest has always been the inner story. What was going back on the subtle planes? Narayan and Narayani came to earth for multiple purposes. Sita, Narayani, was a designer of the whole thing, not a victim, a designer. She created because it was not only to seed these dharmic thoughts into the collective so that a dharmic civilization could emerge, but also to save their beloved devotee who had fallen into such delusion. So that's how I began this journey with Sita, which is not over. It's an unending journey.